Say we're all familiar with pre-loved, with vintage, upcycling. The question is how and why and how far can we go in terms of incorporating this into the future of our fashion? That's what we're going to be talking about today, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome our guests. I'm actually going to start with a question for the audience very quickly. Show of hands, how many of you have bought a pre-loved or vintage item? Very quickly. Well, nearly the whole room. How many of you bought an upcycled item? I think we get an idea. There's a lot fewer. Ronald, you've been upcycling since 2014, but it's still a relatively new concept. Can you tell us, what are we talking about here?
Well, when I started it, the word upcycling wasn't really existing, I think. But my conclusion was, with everything going on in the world and with all the fabrics that were being produced, even we heard it before, the recycled plastic fabrics, I thought the only solution is to work with what is already there, because the damage is done to the world. And so I decided to do couture with all the leftovers in the world. And I also wanted it to look sexy and exciting, because sustainability had this sort of like, image of being, hairy armpits and gray and, not very attractive. So I wanted it to be sexy and exciting and real couture. So this is why I started upcycling. It's not like, I thought, oh, I'm going to upcycle. No, it's sort of like a thing that happened. And yeah, it sort of got out of control.
Well, the idea of upcycling is basically breathing life into what you call it, like waste material. And I guess that's in a similar way, not waste, but Vested Collective is not transforming the items, but is helping to give a life to pieces that may have been buried at the back of a wardrobe. What are the advantages of buying secondhand?
So I think it is exactly what you mentioned, that in 2009, 6 co-founders decided to create Vested Collective on this simple observation: we are only wearing 20 to 30% maximum of the items that we have in our wardrobe. So it was completely crazy, and the idea was really about, number one, bringing sustainability and, I would say, more circularity. And what is amazing is that for the first time, we've just done an impact report, and we have measured this impact. We can really reduce by 90% the environmental cost of an article when we buy secondhand versus firsthand. So this is huge and massive. And then about buying or selling pre-loved, I think when you've done the test just before, it just shows. It's also about loving fashion. It's about finding fashion treasures or iconic pieces that we can't find anymore.
It's not hairy armpits. Susie, you've had several different hats in your career, with fashion model being a relatively new one. Has your relationship to clothes changed as a result of your evolution and your experience?
Well, I must say that working in fashion, as I mentioned in the video, working with fashion and being able to wear beautifully made clothing by couturiers, you really do become conscious of the fact of how much effort and time and love has been put into these clothing. So there are pieces of clothing that you really treasure and you want to keep in your closet for many, many, many years even, or to be able to even leave them for your daughter or your son or for whoever you want to pass it on to.
Hence the importance of having pieces that are made to last.
That's right, that's right. And I think that's really the vintage. I read something where they said vintage clothing was really made to last. It was that time period where clothing was really made with that in mind, to last.
I want to turn to Ronald to go back to recycle. We're obviously covering all upcycling. Can you talk us through the creative process when you're putting together a creation? I guess what I wanted to know is, do you imagine what you want to make and then go and source out the waste material, or is it a bit more like opening up the fridge and saying, what have I got, what magic can I spin?
It's opening up the fridge. Yeah, it's like work with what you have, and sort of the limitations that feed my creativity as well. Because well, downstairs I have a denim outfit, and we had so much denim that we got from someone, so we decided, okay, let's try and make that couture. So we try to reimagine it in as many ways as possible. But I always look at the things that I have around me and try to make something good out of it. And it's piece by piece, so it's very different than creating a collection. We create wardrobes, which in itself is a very sustainable way of thinking about clothes. Every person in this audience should have a creative wardrobe around them, because if you know your personality and if you know what you stand for, then you collect clothes around your personality, then you'll always have the confidence that you have the right pieces around you, and they will be timeless and they'll fit your personality, so you're not going to go out and buy shit that you shouldn't buy, and you're not going to buy things because you want to look like someone else. So I think that's sort of the secret to a more sustainable life as well.
I advise anyone who hasn't seen the denim creation downstairs to go have a look. It's fabulous. Can you tell us where the denim came from, though? Was it lying around in your showroom? Was it from other creators?
Actually, it came from someone who made denim shorts from 501s. So we got all the legs, you know, boxes full of. And yeah, so that was the starting point.
Brilliant. Vanessa, what we haven't yet mentioned is recycling. Some people might say, and this is a question for anyone in the panel after Vanessa, but isn't it better to just break down some of this pre-loved fashion to its like rawest material and then create something that's really on trend right now? Should we be looking more at that?
So first of all, what we all need to do, and I think has been really the thematic here, we need to deeply transform the fashion industry for having really a more sustainable future. And of course, all solutions are really great to look at. And I would say that our position is that every little step counts. Saying that, there is the big issue, and I think that Rosalie, the founder of No More Plastic before, just explained that, to transform deeply and shift the mindset, we really have to start by the production. And recycling, in fact, will not help really to change this overconsumption, because this is really about buying better quality that lasts, really going back into the beautiful craftsmanship that we can find. And really, I think the big enemy is fast fashion, overproduction, and recycling, something that is not good for the planet. I think it was explained very well before. It will maybe de-dramatize a bit the problem, but it will not solve it deeply. So really our position is that pre-loved also is about investing in what we call the upscale effect, because we know that almost 9 people out of 10 that are buying pre-loved that last are really shifting from buying instead fast fashion. So this is what we want to do. We want to change the way we consume fashion.
I agree, and if I may, I think one of the big problems as well is that for the younger, well, for anybody, we can't always afford, you know, the piece that we love in a vintage shop, or that we dream about having, because it's maybe out of our economic reach. And so maybe instead of buying 10 pieces of fast fashion, we buy 5, and then we save to really get that piece that we want. And we'll love it even more. We'll appreciate it even more, you know. And maybe as a fashion industry, we need to set the example and to show how to be responsible. And this is what we're doing today. So, yeah.
I know, Ronald, role models are particularly important. You spoke to me about them before. Do you think the industry is doing enough? And are there enough role models who care deeply and are showing the way?
Well, actually, I think that's one of the biggest problems of the world right now. I mean, since the rise of social media, you saw all these girls, like influencing billions of little girls that wanted to try and be like them. I mean, it started with the Instagram, with the filters and everything. It's like covering yourself up with makeup and like sort of, hiding yourself behind a shield. I think it should be the other way around. And I think as a fashion brand, we have a real power to change girls, and I think we should show eccentricity and like personality, because that's where it starts. And if you do that,
vintage and upcycled is particularly original. It's not something off the rack where
exactly, it's like a point of view. But I mean, I think the role models, even like with all the huge brands that we have now, that keep changing because somebody dresses them in a certain way or a stylist dresses them in a certain way, they sort of lose their personalities. And I find, like, if you look at the role models in the 70s and the 80s, you had, just to name Lulu Lafalaise or something. I mean, that was maybe not the most beautiful woman in the world, but she was inspiring. And when she entered the room, everybody would like look up and think like, wow, there's somebody who comes in here. And this is what girls should look at now, and not at fake girls, covered up.
You anticipated I was going to turn to you right now.
And boys too, not just girls.
Well, and in between.
Yes. Everyone.
Well, I was also going to turn to you because now you've become a fashion influencer. I don't know how you feel about that term. Comfortable?
Yes, I didn't know.
Well, you're here today talking about fashion. I believe that classifies you as a fashion influencer. Do you feel that you have an extra responsibility right now to curate a message?
Of course, because I'm realizing that young people and older people, because I look as well on Instagram, we do have a responsibility. We're here today for the future of the planet, and the future generations, they're the ones who will be up here and speaking about whatever problem will exist in their time. So yes, I do take it very seriously, and that's why I say it is a responsibility. to be in this industry, and we're so lucky to be in this industry that we have to pass that message.
Now, I didn't see you put your hand up or not. Have you dabbled in upcycling clothing or not? We do. A pair of jeans. Okay.
So these are jeans that are made from older jeans. I can't tell you where they came from because I haven't asked the designer, but they've been recycled, so you can see the the pocket was taken off, put in the front, and
Just showing you how fabulous upcycled clothing can really look. Really.
and I have a vintage silk top,
Oh, wow. Okay,
but I can't tell you who made it either because the label's not in it anymore.
Well, that's one of the challenges.
So we can mix and match and create beautiful, really nice outfits that we can.
Beautiful looks. Yes.
I might have maybe a more kind of positive hope that I want to give about the young generation, because what we are seeing really in all the studies that we are doing is that the young generation, of course it's complex. On one side they can consume fast fashion for sure, but at the same time they are the ones that are the most engaged with the planet, and they really care about the way the brands behave, the company behaves, and they are really the one we can see that are the most engaged in the pre-loved fashion currently. Because one, you're right, it could be to access a product that maybe they couldn't afford in first hand, but it's also because, and we have really seen that, they want to see the ethics behind the way they purchase. So it's still a bit ambiguous, but it's going into potentially the right direction. And I think also the brands have quite understood that, because when we see that, for example, at the last Cannes Festival, Bella Hadid was wearing a vintage Gucci by Tom Ford dress. What is funny is that we can immediately see the peaks of a search on our site about this vintage pieces. So it's also, I think in terms of role models, it's also the role of all these brands and models to also make them wear upcycling clothes or vintage, to also explain that it's not about buying new or really something that is not at the level.
Yeah. And like Ronald said, I mean, you can be so unique in that. When I saw the two wardrobe pieces that were downstairs, I mean, I immediately wanted to try on that denim jacket. It's so fierce. I mean, it's like a crocodile armor. And even the black jacket, I mean, it's so contemporary. We could wear it with what we have.
Absolutely.
You know, and you would be so unique and so beautiful.
And Ronald, do you think that working with constraints actually brings out the best of you, rather than perhaps having a blank page where you can source, like, I want a black wool from here and I want this from here? What do you think?
I find it almost like unethical to be able to do everything that I would want to do. If I were to head now a fashion company, I don't think I could do it anymore, because I feel it's unethical. Like what you said before, producing new clothes right now, it's I find it really difficult to think about that. I feel like there's so much stuff that we have in this world that we can use, and so let's make the best out of that first before we start like producing new things. Nobody needs it, and we don't need those huge collections. We don't need 6 collections a year. We don't need people to fly all over the world to look at a fashion show for 10 minutes. It's all why. Can we think of different ways? And I think as a fashion industry, we also have to think about different ways of creating business possibilities. And why should it always be about product? Can it be about an experience? Can it be about inspiration? People are willing to pay for that. So maybe instead of producing 10,000 of the same sweatshirts every season, let's think about other things. I think as a big luxury groups, they have responsibility to do that. And, I think the younger generation will force them to do it as well. So, that's the hope for the future, I think.
Now, we've been very positive about, upcycling and pre-love, but Vanessa, this is surely not the first time you've had this question. It's an important one though. Pre-love fashion does tend to be somewhat cheaper than buying it brand new. Is there a real risk that by being able to have more kind of buying power with your money, that it fuels the very cycle we're trying to avoid, and that's buying and consuming and discarding?
It's often a question and it's a legitimate question that we might have. Of course, it's about consumption, but as I was saying, we are not producing anything, and all our business model is about circularity. So there is no production, so there is no waste. And today, what we really want to do is to provide a longer life, a new life to a product. So, and as I said before, we have really seen that, for example, by extending the life of an article for 9 months, you reduce its impact by 30%. So it's really about what is the impact on the environment, that we can see that the circularity model is really helping concretely the planet. And overconsumption of secondhand before we come really polluting the world. I think we have room here to grow, because the big problem today, as we said, is producing new and bad quality of new pieces.
It's a problem for a panel in 10 years, perhaps. Not right now. Susie, you did touch on this earlier, but let's be honest, it is nice to be wearing new pieces of fashion all the time. Like, do we have to give that up, or do we have to just rethink what we do? Because
No, I think everyone loves to have a new piece of clothing. But like I said before, we don't need to have 20 of them. We can have just a lot less, but quality. And I love the idea of mixing old and not so old and very old. And that's what's so interesting. You're going to look for that piece. It's so much fun. You go to the flea market, you go to the vintage shops, even online. You can spend so much time. And it's true that that's the fun part. And it's also the anticipation. We don't know how to wait for things anymore. We all want to have everything very quickly. As soon as you click on the thing on your computer, you want it delivered. So we've forgotten how to wait for something. Have that, isn't there a song, Anticipation, right? And I think that is what we need. And we need to learn how to do things differently. But we can. We're an intelligent species.
sometimes.
Sometimes, I'm hoping.
And if I may also, I think it's we are talking a lot about all the bad impact of fashion, etc. Here, what we want to say is that it's not about loving fashion any less. It's in fact about loving fashion more, to be more demanding, to be more really asking for more quality, to maybe say more goodbyes on things that we are not using and put them and give them a new life. It's a bit our philosophy. We really want to celebrate fashion, and that's why we really we even said that long live fashion. That's our new motto, because I think at a point it's true we are hearing, and it's true, a lot of dramatic thing, but all these people in the room, and we love fashion, and it's not about feeling guilty, it's just to make a change.
But I think also that, fashion shows, they can also be different now. Like, why don't we use, I do it myself. I take pieces from like 4 seasons ago, 6 seasons ago, wardrobes ago, and I put them in the collection again. I show them again in a different way, and nobody even recognizes it. Nobody knows. And this is what people do at home as well. If you have a great closet with clothes, like you wear something from 5 years ago, you wear it again, you style it in a different way. You have to be creative. We have to be more creative. You cannot buy cookie cutter fashion. That's, I think we need to stimulate people out there to really experiment and to know who they are and dress alike,
You're so right, because in my closet, sometimes I have pieces that it took me a long time to get, and I love wearing them over and over because it really was hard to get. So, yeah.
Well, I heard a rule somewhere that if you had didn't wear it for the last 2 years, like you needed to discard it because in terms of the opposite, which is kind of cleaning up. But in fact, pieces that I've got pieces that are quite old, and one day I feel like wearing them again.
And even if you have like an evening dress that you only wore once, but you have it in your closet, it gives you the confidence that you have that dress. Yeah. And maybe one day you'll wear it again. That's not bad. It's not like you have to wear it 30 times like we heard before. I think that's nonsense. I think if it's part of you, if you attach yourself, if you have a link to those clothes, I call them clothes with a soul as well, then they're all right there. Sometimes you just look at them. That's enough.
I've got a final question very briefly for all of you, so we're going to keep it really short. What do we do? Is sustainable fashion, recycling, upcycling, vintage is all really on trend. What do we do to make sure that it stays on trend for the long term? Starting with you, Susie. What do we need to do? Talk more about it?
We have to be more conscious of our impact on the planet, to maybe talk about it more, because it makes it less like, oh my God, it just makes it more commonplace, and you don't have to be guilty or ashamed about it. And I think it starts with conversation, yes.
I would say join forces, because I think this panel is a great example. We have really creativity and designers, we have role model, and we have potentially a catalyst of what we can bring together. And I think this is really the direction that should make all brands and all companies together.
Yeah, and I'll come back to just know yourself, know who you are, get your own style together and build your wardrobe, because then you're already a much more sustainable person.
Many thanks to 3 of you for that really engaging conversation. Thank you very much.